I've been trying to record this episode all morning, but a certain spooky cat has not been allowing me to get into my computer, as that is her favorite place to lay down and groom herself. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna get into this Psalter from Father Silvio, Cherubim Press, and I do love it so. Welcome back, everybody, to Orthodox Review, the most uneducated educational program here on the internet today. I'm your host, the guy with 1.5 thumbs, and as always, I'm very, very pleased to have you with us here today. Deep breath. First and foremost, thank you to all my Patreon supporters, to everyone that drops money in the tip jar, channel members, and everyone that just participates in the channel, and especially for those of you that continue to pray for this work here. It's a literal lifesaver. I thank God for you every single day. That being said, listen, we're going to get into this Psalter, but we got to talk about Psalters in general just for a moment first, because there's a lot of Psalters on the market now. Just like with prayer books, and people have their opinions one way or the other. I don't like this about a translation. I don't like that about a translation. I don't like the size. I don't like the paper. Or I do like the size. I do like the paper. It's all over the place. And so one has to ask, okay, why do we need another Psalter? Why do we want another Psalter? And the answer to this one is interesting. You see, there have been precious few new translations of Psalters introduced into the English-speaking market in forever. Typically, a fresh Psalter translation is actually a recension of another translation. For instance, let's say the HTM Psalter, the Boston Psalter, is based on the Douay-Rheims Psalter with the Jerusalem Bible thrown in there for good measure. So they're starting with one translation and kind of correcting it. And in fact, some great examples of that just being the stated case would be a Psalter for Prayer, which is a recension of the Coverdale Psalter, and the King James Psalter corrected for the Septuagint from CTOS, and those videos, they're in the Psalter playlist. You can go check them out if you want. So in modern times, and by modern I say, the last few hundred years, since, say, the King James and Coverdale, there have only been less than half a dozen actual new translations of the Psalms. The first that pops to mind is that of Donald Sheehan, which is a Psalter we covered years ago on the show, and is probably one of the most beautiful and poetic Psalters in the English language today. Ask anyone who's read it, and they'll tell you that's probably the one we should have been going with since its publication. Side note, he was also responsible for helping translate the Psalter in the Orthodox Study Bible. The other, and this is a point of contention for a lot of people, Father Ephraim Lash. Although his was not ever completed, and so it was sort of completed by St. Ignatius Orthodox Press, is another translation of the Psalms that started from scratch. It started with the Greek. And although it might have looked at other Psalter translations for like, okay, how does this work? It was still a fresh translation. And that brings us to today's Psalter, the Orthodox Psalter, from Father Silviu Bunta, who is a priest in the OCA, the Bulgarian Archdiocese. He is a very, very smart person. He is a linguist, and he did something really, really cool here. And as far as fresh translations go, poppin' fresh. Let's go top down and check this one out. Okay, so here we are. This is the Orthodox Psalter with explanatory notes, which is, in my opinion, one of the coolest parts about here, because Father Silviu is no slouch when it comes to it. Now we're going to get into the contents of the book, but first and foremost, we have to go over the construction. Now, here is where the book really got put to the test recently. You see, I was going to work yesterday. I had to take the bus. It was raining, so everything was in my backpack, and I had this with me so I could finish my notes. And of course, there is nothing waterproof about my backpack. Still got that cough. So We did get a little bit of moisture damage. Call it damage. You can see where it's a little warped, but you know what? It's holding up fantastic. There has been no compromise to the glue at all, which is a good sign. It's still in the process of being broken in, but as you can see from the binding here, and it'll focus. It might focus. Pretty solid. It is sewn and glued. Now that kind of separation is pretty normal when you've got something this stiff. I don't see that becoming an issue anytime in the near future. These are printed in Romania, in Bucharest. So that, at least it's not China, for those of you that like to poo-poo on that. But that's a subject for another time. All right, so let's get into this. 2022 Cherubim Press, 305 pages. So the sources for this, like I said, it's a fresh translation, and the sources he used for this, I'll give you the fancy names for the sources and then what they actually are. You've got the Codex 43 from the Pantokrator Monastery on Athos, the Snagov, which is the Greek manuscript 2132, and that's dated around 1700. And then you have the original from St. Catherine's Monastery in Mount Sinai, which is dated circa 1300. And so what all this together means is it's the recension of the Psalter used in Simonos Petra, amongst other places, that including the Pantokrator Monastery on Athos. So the psalms he used, or the copy of the Psalter he used, is a liturgical Psalter. It is one that is used in the Kleros, on the Kleros, I should say, for prayer, and so that's his starting point. And he makes extensive explanation of all those things in the notes. So let's get into a couple things. Now, like I said, this is a truly fresh translation. It's not retranslated from any existing English. And because the source material is a liturgical book, breaks and punctuation in the Psalms themselves reflect that of the source Psalter. So, and also in keeping with that, like, bad Greek has been translated into bad English, in his words, and we'll get into that in a second. But all in all, what you will find is a Psalter that, though maybe jarring, let's say, at first, actually reads really well. This is not a critical text. Now, even though it does have explanatory notes in it, which account for maybe the last 100 pages of the book, it is not meant to be, like, this is not a Psalter you sit down and you study. This is a Psalter you sit down and read. Now, the second version of this that is forthcoming will have the Kathisma prayers in it, and people are already complaining about that. And it's like, listen, he needed to get this out. People wanted it, and so he gave it to us. The next version won't have the notes in it. It'll just be a Psalter with no frills, which is good because other things can be distracting. But you still have notes in here for the Psalms used in their context. And so now we get into the Psalms proper. Now, these illustrations you see here are actually from the Psalter he translated from on Mount Athos, and that's pretty rad. So let's just get into the Psalms a little bit, and there is an extensive section in the back of the book on this one translation right here, happy the man. Now, you usually see blessed is the man, but in this case, happy the man. Because of the nuance of the original Greek, this seemed, well, because it's not the kind of happy that the secular world thinks. It's not that, ooh, giddy happy. It's a totally different kind of happy, because that's how Greek is. Like, they'll have five words for the same one in English, but they'll all have very, very different meanings. So happy is the man. No, not happy is happy the man who has not walked in the counsel of the impious, and has not stood in the way of sinners, and has not sat upon the seat of the pestilent. All right, so right away, once you've been reading the Psalms for a while, this becomes kind of like old hat. Like, you're used to the flow, and you know what the Psalms mean. And that is one thing that he really wanted to point out in the notes, is that Psalms are not just something you read. They're not a literary endeavor. The Psalms are something we own. You know, it's not what the Psalms are saying, but we're trying to say with the Psalms, and that heavily informed his translation. With our beloved Psalm 50, have mercy on me, O God, according to your great mercy, according to the fullness of your compassion, blot out my transgression. More thoroughly wash me from my lawlessness and cleanse me from my sin. I actually really, really like that translation. More thoroughly wash me from my lawlessness and cleanse me from my sin. Now you notice that, again, he was very light on punctuation because there is no punctuation in the Greek, really. So is it more thoroughly, comma, wash me from my lawlessness, or is it to be washed from lawlessness more thoroughly? Good question. But these are things that we shouldn't be thinking about. We should just be praying them. For behold, you have loved truth, the unseen and hidden things of your wisdom you have shown me. Now, again, this is kind of modern English, but it doesn't flow clunkily like modern English does. Now, it can be jarring from time to time, but that, in his own words, is there to kind of keep you in the Psalms and instead of getting lazy and just rattling off syllables. And I can kind of dig that. Now, concerning the notes, they are clear, they are concise, they are expansive, almost exhaustive, but very, very approachable. Now, I put the bookmark here for no good reason, other than, that's where I was reading last night. But here, we have an entire section, and this is just to give you an idea of the kind of thought and care he put into the translation of specific words. This entire section on the word happy. I could read this to you, but it would add minutes upon minutes to the video. And frankly, I want you to go out and experience this for yourself. Now, in the beginning here, he does make note of what translations are cited in his notes, not necessarily in the translation itself. So you have the Psalter for Prayer, the Donald Sheehan Psalter, the Ephraim Lash, the Lazarus Moore, which I'm still trying to get my hands on, and then Septuagint, stuff like that. And in fact, there's a whole section in here on like what constitutes the Septuagint, and then of course the sources in Greek that this particular Psalter is based on. So page 261, there's a whole section on why there's no quotation marks, because it was hard, it's always difficult to identify where it's running on to and from, where the quote ends. And plus, it's another one of those things that can kind of take you out of the prayer. Let's see. Like I said, bad Greek is now bad English. He kind of kept all that. All in all, this is an oral text. The Psalms have always been there for recitation, for prayer. They're not this book of poetry that you sit and read in silence and ponder. They're words that you make your own. It is the church in song, and it is in fact the prayer book of our church. Well, that's it. Spooky Cat has come to investigate, so I guess that's pretty much it. What are you doing, huh? Meow 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 meow. Anyway, it's no, don't stand on the computer. Oh no, don't do that. We're gonna end this video before she destroys everything. Love you all to death. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, share this around. We're getting there. We're gonna make this full time. We're gonna do it. Okay, the cat has totally ruined my concentration. On behalf of Spooky Cat, her missing mom, and myself, thank you all so much for joining us and for your continued support. Links below. Don't forget to go to church, say your prayers, and remember God. God bless you all. Love you to bits.